Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. Do let me know if you can hear me. My name is Lisa Dublin, and I'm a health and life coach, and I help you to be able to speak, to lead, and to live with confidence. Because, like, why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't you win in life? If you're watching this later, just type replay for me. Let me know that you can hear me. I won't be very long this morning. Yesterday, I put out something on Facebook and I wanted to talk a little bit about it today about what was the biggest lesson that you learned in 2022. I do know that the year is not over, there's still lessons to be learned, but we will all agree that we are winding down and perhaps in many ways preparing for 2023. So I wanted to pose the question this morning. What have you learned this year? And good or bad, what was the biggest lesson? So, what is the biggest lesson? Of course, we all did. You can hear me. Hi, Alex. How are you? Good morning. Of course, like we all learned a lot this year, like every other year. But when I asked the question, something should rise to the surface, something that supersedes, that is more than all the others, that will rise to the surface. And that's what you want to like look out for, because it might have been the lesson that most impacted you, that made the biggest effect in your life and your thinking, in the way that you thought about life and the future or people or something of the sort. So for the life of me, I've been thinking about it for my own self, like, what is the biggest lesson that I learned in 2022? Go ahead and type it in the chat if you do know what your biggest lesson is. Please do type it. Let's share. And I think that the biggest lesson that I learned was the power of faith, the power of absolutely believing in something. And well, a faith that is for me grounded in Christ, grounded in, God can make this happen, and going forward with that belief, with all the energy and all of the focus and the certainty that you know it's going to happen. That was my biggest lesson. And it's also tied to, for me, the reality. I think I put that down in the comments yesterday when I asked the question. The reality of the spiritual world, the reality that this world in which we live is not just two-dimensional, it's actually four-dimensional. Okay. Anyway, more about that. But what was your biggest lesson? I wanted to share a little bit of what some of my audience members said yesterday when I posted the question, and some of the answers that came back, which were very interesting. Like for me, just reading those responses were like a life lesson in themselves, because the answers were so varied and everything was so true. So somebody said in the comments yesterday that the biggest lesson she learned was to live every day like it was your last. What if live every day like it was your last? Somebody else said, don't hold other people responsible for your happiness. Oh my gosh, that's a big one. That other people are not responsible for your happiness. And it also means, too, that other people are not responsible for your disappointments or for when things go awry, when things don't go well. I know oftentimes, obviously, like things happen and people disappoint us, and they can really throw a curve, in the trajectory of our lives, that because of their actions we end up paying. But here's the other thing that I've found: the more I stay in thinking that it was that person's actions that made me who I am today, is the less responsibility I take for me to actually get out of the situation and make something of it. What if we say to ourselves, my happiness is on me? And no matter what happens, I keep on returning to that fact, returning to that reality and that statement that it is up to me to create happiness for myself. It is up to me to create the life that I want for myself. All of these things, right? What if We remove the responsibility for our happiness and our destiny from other people's actions, and we put them squarely on our shoulders. What happens, right? So Alex says one of her biggest lessons was forgiveness. When you don't forgive, you're only hurting yourself. I love that. I like to have the analogy of, like, when you don't forgive people, you're literally just swallowing poison and hoping to kind of kill the other person. That doesn't work. No, I will always put myself first where forgiveness is concerned. Then, when I forgive you, whether or not you think you're getting off scot free, I'm the one whose heart is then open to receive love and to be healed. I am the one who is front and center when I forgive somebody. It doesn't, no, like, you hurt me. This is how I put it in my St. Lucian way. After you hurt me, I'm going to keep on keeping you in my mind. No, release, you go. Like, in a way, maybe I haven't really learned all the ins and outs of complete forgiveness, but for me, I don't know that you're worth me holding on to you. If you've hurt me, I will let you go. Go your way. Like, you're not that important anymore. I'll forgive you because I become my center. I become my main thing. When you forgive yourself, when you forgive people, you really are releasing yourself to heal and to get better, because somebody somebody hurts you, you keep on holding on to them, it means you continue to give them the power to hurt you over and over again. I find that just giving people too much power. Okay, when you forgive people, you let them go and they don't have any power over you. For me, it's all about having control over myself, having control over my things, over myself. Mm-mm. Because you don't forgive people and they keep on taking up space in your head. No, not at all. Anyway, folks, here are some of the other things. We're looking at what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned. What was your biggest lesson learned in 2022? And somebody else said, self control and humility will lead to God exalting you. Self control and humility will lead to God exalting you. Another person said, the power of forgiveness. The power that seems to keep on coming up quite a bit. I love this one in particular. Hang on. Oh my God, what did I do with my comments? Hang on, you guys. There was a lovely one about energy. Okay, so here it goes. This is from my very good friend. And she says, the battle is always in your mind. Working off energy and doing things with love in your heart changes the outcome. So, like, I so love that lesson because it really resonates with a lot of what I've been learning and practicing in 2022. So, the last 2 years, I got certified as a life coach, and life has become a lot more meaningful, a lot more intentional and interesting. And one of the lessons that I have to continually practice and I teach clients is the energy and the intention behind what you're doing. So, like, I also do my Speak with Confidence program, which, by the way, it's coming up in February, end of February. And one of the lessons, the first lessons we learn, why are you speaking? With what energy are you coming? Where are you coming from? Even before you go into a speaking situation, or even in terms of how you act in life and deal with people, check the intention, check the energy with which you're coming to the person, approaching a relationship, going to say something to somebody. Check the intention. Oftentimes, when we say stuff like we have a feeling about somebody, it's because what we are sensing is the reason behind, the spirit of the thing, the reason that they're doing it as opposed to how they do it. And what I've found is I have worked very hard and continue to work this year. And I think it'll probably be my life's work to work on cleaning up my intentions, to work on approaching situations, people, relationships, activities, to be from the right intention and from the right energy. When that happens, when when the energy, I think, is clean and as pure as it can be, and based, for me, in what God says I should be and who I should be, when I come from that point of view, the results are often better. And I have less to worry about in terms of guarding this and not saying this because the intention in the first instance is right. So Alex says she can relate. Yeah. The way you approach, and it's not a matter of like some people are very good at putting on a show. Some people are very good at doing the poised and doing the graceful and the gracious, but the intention at some point will just break through. And you're like, who is that? And I feel like that is what that is. I love that it was Ramona who said that. I love that that lesson was one of the biggest ones. The energy with which you approach life in general, things in particular, will depend on will actually dictate the outcome. So that's an awesome one. The way you approach is so important. Here's another one. Let me just. So somebody said, apart from the Most High, I have a handful of people I can count on when in distress. I mean, now here's the thing, not everything is going to be positive. Every lesson, like, we didn't just learn good lessons. And in fact, if the truth be told, we most learned where we failed the most. Okay, we most learned where we most failed. But it's what you do with those lessons. Are you taking the lessons um like in a spirit of like bitterness, I didn't need to learn that, whatever, or are you taking the time to self-assess and to say, hey, I failed there, I learned this lesson. Me learning the lesson doesn't mean that I have anything missing, anything broken. I'm still whole. I just learned a lesson because I am human, and that's what humans do. We make mistakes. We're supposed to learn. We're supposed to take these lessons and move on. So, you taking the lesson doesn't mean in any way that you are less, that you have to be humiliated or stay humiliated. You guys, another big lesson that I learned this year, and this is perhaps my little last point. I learned a secret to doing hard things this year. And I wanted to share that with you as a way of just like, just sharing a little bit. So, I mean, being a life coach means I'm always life coaching. I'm always coaching myself. And I realize one of the reasons that I'm succeeding in this field is because I've always been on this personal development journey. Like, you can't offer what you yourself are not experiencing and believing in for yourself. So I've always been this person learning a lesson, wanting to know better and be better, whatever. It's just amazing and rewarding, like being in this field. And there was like earlier this year, like, truth be told, like, full disclosure, at least where that is concerned, I had to make a phone call. Okay, I had to make a phone call, and I wasn't looking forward to it. Those phone calls with people, yeah, you like them, love them, whatever, but the phone call can be painful. You guys don't speak often. And every time you speak, you have to crank up the energy to kind of make it happen. Okay. So yeah, I have one of those, or I had one of those once. I probably still have. But what I discovered was a way to go through a hard thing. So I want you to think of the last hard thing that you had to do. And because I've been doing a lot of this work about questioning myself and dealing with how I approach things, I realized I had procrastinated a couple of days not making this phone call. So I'm like pacing my basement. Okay, Lisa, why aren't you making this call? What's going on? Why is this hard? And I had to first say to myself, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's hard. Yeah, I can do big things. I can run how many miles, but it's hard for me to pick up the phone and make this call. And I had to sit with that uncomfortable feeling of making that phone call. I had to sit with it for a while, marinate in it. I have a hard thing to do. I acknowledge that it is hard. I don't know if I've said this before, but that was the first step. The acknowledge and acceptance that this thing that I have to do is hard. And how many of us, when we have something hard to do, we don't often take the time to acknowledge that it's difficult for me right now. No, we just simply either barrel our way through and do it awkwardly. We do it in the wrong spirit. We do it in a bitter fashion, or we don't do it at all. We sweep it under the carpet and we move on, knowing very well that we should be dealing with it. But I did that. And when I acknowledged that it was hard, there was a moment of humility, there was a moment of pause. There was a moment of then curiosity. And that was the next step for me. After I acknowledged that it was difficult, and you guys, I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill, okay? It was important that I made this phone call just for a relationship, whatever, but it was difficult for me. I hope somebody here can relate. And when I acknowledged it, the next step was curiosity. Why is this hard? And here's the thing, okay? When you ask yourself that question, the question of why, you will come up on some truths that might be difficult, but that can be eye openers to solve the hard thing. And here's what I realized. And, don't blame me. I'm just being me, and this is who I am, and that's okay. I realized that I was just not being myself in the phone calls, in the relationship. There are times that I'm very effusive, but there are times on a phone call I just want to be like, hi, yeah, and just let the chips fall where they may. I know some people who do that very well. Like you call them and there's just silence on the phone. But you get the sense that they're not being standoffish. It's just their way. They're just like a peaceful sea that will not be disturbed. But many times when we call people, we don't let the conversations breathe. We think we have to rush in with a lot of talk and chatter, and no. And I realized I was not in the mood to crank up anything. I simply wanted to call this person and be quiet on the phone, but because I thought I needed to make a big fuss, which I'm sure the person was not expecting, oh my goodness, right? Because I thought that's why it was difficult. And when I got to that truth, then I could deal with why it was difficult because I got to the reason behind the reluctance to make the phone call. And knowledge literally is power. So it was just a phone call, but because I took the time to process it in that very transparent way, then I said, okay, but I went a step further. Make the phone call or don't make the phone call. One would promote relationship and love and good feeling. And, just it was, I needed to make the call. And I think the person needed to hear from me. And I did, there was love there, there was care. It was just the bridge of, oh my gosh, you don't need to sound like you just came off a roller coaster. Or no, you don't have to sound like breathless all the time. And hi, no. Okay. And I just made the phone call and I was just my quiet self on the phone, and it was well received. The person was more happy just to hear from me, I think, than to whether I was like bright and cheery or just like normal on the phone. And I learned a lesson there about being authentic, and it was okay to be myself. I didn't need to be extra. And again, like the big lesson for me was how to do a hard thing, acknowledge that it's hard, and then sit with that knowledge, accept it, because in accepting, you find the seed and you find like the handle for you to now open that thing and look at it. But you can't do that if you're denying or just simply making as if it does not exist. So that was my little learning, and I was like, so happy to kind of wrote about it and made it into a lesson that sometimes I now use in coaching in terms of what are the hard things in life that you have to do. Why aren't you doing them? Why? There's a reason. Take the time with yourself. You can be in the shower, you can be in the bathroom, you can be putting on your makeup or driving, whatever, at the kitchen sink. Okay? You could, even in those spaces, while you're doing physical things, you can be engaging in personal development mentally to make your life even more meaningful, is what I'm saying. So I hope this kind of resonated with people this morning. I think I came to talk about how to do a hard thing. That was in the back of my mind. So it means perhaps there's somebody who needed to hear and connect that kind of way. So send me a DM, tell me what you're thinking. What was your biggest lesson in 2022? And hopefully you can take that lesson into 2023 and really action it. If it was a good thing that you learned, hey Violet, how are you? Good morning. Right? Hopefully you can take that lesson that you learned in 2022 and you can apply it with, in 2023, because that's what it's about, like, you guys, God is good. um Last thing I have to say, one of the biggest lessons I learned in 2022, it wasn't a lesson. It was more of falling in love again with God, and just how interesting he is. Hey Colleen, good morning to you. How you doing? Right? Just how big he is. Hey, listen, if you turned off of God for church, that's good. Good. Now you have a chance to kind of turn around and look for him and not for church, right? That's just like the extra, I think. But one of my biggest, I fell in love with how fascinating and interesting and bottomless God is, and the way that a relationship with him can literally infuse your life with a different color, a different perspective, and give you hope. And that's what we need. That was another thing for me. Like, oh my goodness, God is all that. Like, He's very interesting. Like he made you a certain way for a reason. And if you pursue him, you find more of yourself. You don't have to be like everybody else. Like, why? That's just boring. Be you, and because that's what God made you to be, right? So, anywho, I'll see you tomorrow, you guys. Let's continue to talk about little things until we get to the end of the year. A lot is happening on my side, just preparing for 2023 in a big way, in an expectant way, in an inspirational way, that kind of thing. So I hope you come along for that journey with me, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time. See ya. Have a